Hello and welcome back to the Swim Swift Elite podcast. Today we chat to the hugely dedicated and experienced coach Mark Rose. Having begun his coaching career while still swimming on international teams himself, he knew exactly what he wanted from really early on. He's coached at Rotherham Metro, Joe's home club, Trident Swimming Club, Deventure Excel and is now head coach at City of Manchester. To date, in his coaching career, he's coached over 60 swimmers to international competitions and has helped them to achieve Olympic and Paralympic qualification, finals and Paralympic medals too. Having proven himself as a successful age group and senior coach, he's been part of the British swimming staff teams between 2003 and 2019, having been an off-site staff member for the Olympic team in 2012 and a full coach for the Paralympic team in 2012 and 2016. Today we chat with him about his desire to be a coach and how he built his coaching philosophies, whether anything changes when transitioning swimmers from age group into senior level, and his experiences at the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Also, what his return to the pool strategies look like for his swimmers. Big thanks to Mark for talking to us today, and we hope you really enjoy listening. Hi everyone. So, Mark, welcome. You've been a coach for a good while now. You've got lots and lots of experience. But how are you today? How are you coping?
Good to see you both. All pretty good from this end, really. It's been a challenging time, and it's still going to be a challenging time for the foreseeable future. But you know, we're all working in elite sport. We're used to these challenges, aren't we? It's just another hurdle to come over.
For definite, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it. It's just another hurdle. Like, it's quite a big hurdle. It's a unique hurdle. We've not gone through it before, so you can't just use your experience. But it's definitely a hurdle, and we can get through it.
There's no textbooks that's planned for this, are there? Councilman and McGlishko were certainly not talking about this in their textbooks when they were doing coach education stuff. So I think, it's going to be a really interesting time. As we return to the water and we get back on it, but I think experience does help because it's experience of people. But the reality is it's a question of making sure that first and foremost, as a coach, you're looking after yourself. As a swimmer, you're looking after yourself. That's the really important thing.
Yeah, it's good to have you on, mate. And obviously, we kind of go way back, right back to Rotherham Metro, the mighty Rotherham Metro, and it's good to have someone on with a proper accent. Do you mind giving us a bit of an overview, mate, of how you started, transition from your swimming career into your coaching career, and how you've ended up being heading up Manchester Aquatics?
I think I've had a pretty straightforward journey, to be honest. Some people that I've spoke to don't think it is, but for me, it felt like a natural progression. Once I was an early developer. I was one of the lads that were kicking 6 foot at 12 years old and starting to win stuff. And I really enjoyed the lifestyle. I enjoyed the camaraderie amongst the swimming group. I enjoyed the fun, the banter with coaches. And I enjoyed going to competitions, as we all do. So at the age of 12, 13, I made a concrete decision, and I can remember doing it thinking, I want to coach. I don't want to go and do anything else. I want to stay in this as long as and I had ambitions to, obviously, as everybody does, to swim for the country and get international honours and win nationals and all those things. But the reality is I was playing a bit of a longer term game, if you like. Right back to the point, I remember being in a careers interview at my school at Thriver Comprehensive, which is, Joe will know, it's not the most salubrious of venues, even in Rotherham. And the careers advisor told me it began with F, and I was an idiot because nobody ever made any money from sport unless you were a footballer. And I didn't quite understand that and ended up getting put on report because I walked out of a careers meeting. So maybe it's that South Yorkshire bullish personality that we've all got that, I'll do it then.
Yeah.
But absolutely. And I only ever wanted to coach. So I swam for quite a long time. I mean, we swam together a little bit, Joe. I think I was in my mid to late 20s when you were swimming in the same squad as me as a teenager.
Yeah, you even long, yeah.
Absolutely.
To your shoulders.
And yeah, it was back in the days, the great 90s. But yeah, I just carried on swimming for a number of reasons. Number one is I loved it and I loved race. But number two was it was pretty apparent that, and I wasn't being negative about it, but I wasn't going to go to the Olympic Games. I made a few of the sort of England teams, the teams that are picked from the second string from trials. I won nationals a few times on a number of events. I got a British junior record at one point. I weren't exactly garbage. I was a decent swimmer, but I wasn't going to make the big deal. I wasn't going to go and do the 5-ring meet as a swimmer. Yeah. So I decided to carry on with focus and try and make these second string teams. And the reason is I then plonked myself at the side of the coaches on the buses, wow, in the airport lounges, on the poolside, in the hotel restaurants, and sat and talked to them about why they coached, what they did, what they believed in, what was their physiology background, what was their educational background, because I was not academic. I mean, I don't have a formal degree. I have a qualification afterwards that relates to that. But the reality is as a non-academic, I was going to channel all my energy in getting educated in whatever form I needed to become as good a coach as I could be. And with all that in mind, I actually approached our coach, Colin Cunningham, and said, next time there's a coaching job up, I want to have a go at this because I want it to be long term. And the phrase in Rotherham is serve your time. It's serving your apprenticeship. So I said to him, I want to serve my time a little bit here. And if there's something I can do that fits in around training, I'd like to do it, even if it's just a couple of sessions a week. And he gave me a group that was 4 sessions a week, at a place called Maltby C Squad. And it ended up being quite a good group. Out of that group, there was 18 in that squad. 12 of them got national medals at some point. Wow. And I think that was part of that was luck, but most of those people went on to do that in other venues, but they went on. We got that grounding in those kids, and we talked then about putting the basics in place for them and getting that long-term development plan in place. And what I really thank Colin for is he let me go and fail. So he didn't criticize any of the plans. I remember the first couple of plans I went to him, they were garbage. But he let me have a go with it, let me roll with it. He realized these kids were 11 years old, 12 years old. It wasn't the end of the world. There was a bigger picture to play here. Yeah. And they were still getting a lot out of it. And I think you might have been part of that group that won National Junior League with Rotherham.
Can't remember.
In the early 90s.
Yeah, could have been.
Yeah. And there were three C squads in Rotherham, and out of that group of about 36 athletes, every single one of them from Maltby went into that group and went and raced and won the national final against people like Leeds, and which at the time then was a powerhouse in age groups.
Yeah.
So a talented bunch of people, very driven. I don't ever remember having to speak to anybody about attendance. Everybody wanted to be there. It was just good fun. So so I went through that time as a swimmer, picking everybody's brains when I was away at meets, and also talking to the people that were my competitors at the time, same age group, and what they were doing with their coaches. The guys at Barnet, people like Sarah Price and Mark Foster that were working with Dougie Campbell at the time, and they were firing on all cylinders and winning British club champs. So I only actually stopped swimming when I was 29, and the only reason I did is because I got an offer I couldn't refuse, really. And it was a small club in Derbyshire called Trident. Okay. And they offered me a head coach's job. They spent a bit of time trying to persuade me to do it because I didn't really want to stop swimming. I were enjoying it still, and it was good money for the hours worked. But more importantly, there were a couple of people on that committee that were incredibly influential and knowledgeable in what was then the ASA. One fella went on to write Swim 21. He's now the head of licensing, a guy called John Idle, and he was my line manager. And the chair was a guy called Chris Bostock, that you may have heard of, that has been an ASA president, and he basically ran nationals for a few years. So I got a chance to learn about the politics of the sport. So I saw that as not just an opportunity to coach and earn a few quid. It was actually an opportunity to there was a hole in my knowledge I didn't know I'd got until they talked about it, and it was right, now I can go do that. So I did that for a few years. That was an interesting club. Only had 14 hours of pool space. It's just outside of Loughborough, actually, in Long Eaton. Yeah, and 14 hours of pool space, all at weird times, like 9 till 10 at night, the usual stuff you hear from small clubs. Yeah. And I think they'd had one national qualifier ever before. And the summer we left, we got 6 finalists, 3 of them on podiums.
Wow.
So, and one girl broke British junior record. You may remember a national short course at Norwich one summer. I think it was 2001. Wow. Yeah, well, the Heather Dilks won the 100 fly and broke British junior record. So again, good group of people. Didn't have to persuade people to attend. People bought into it. And then I got the opportunity to go and coach at Deventio. Yeah. That was a big break, if you like. I'd been part of a little group called Select Coaches Group that Bill Sweetenham and John Atkinson had put in place for education. And I landed this job, which was all the local clubs in Derbyshire working together, which Trident, one of my teams, was part of. And that was a great opportunity. Strangely, for no more money, but twice the work. But a great opportunity. Yeah, that really flew. Derbyshire had always produced a few people like Ross, like Dean Milwain, that had to move out of Derbyshire to really achieve, and they'd gone to Bath and then Loughborough or offshore centre. But this was a real chance to put in place 20 hours of pool space, land training, put the basic meat and 2 veg in place for a good swim programme. And it was very well supported, and still is. Jamie, that's running Deventio now, he's working really well with those clubs there. It's really flying again. And that was a great opportunity. At that point, I think out of the kids that we took in, 40 kids, and they were kids, there were no adults then. Right. There were 6 of them that had made nationals. I stayed there 5 years. The last summer, we won nationals, and out of those, the 40 in the group that we coached, 26 people walked away from Sheffield with a gold medal.
Right.
Wow.
It's impressive.
Gold medal as well.
Yeah, that was a really, really satisfying thing to happen. And we had 16 people swim for Britain. And I think, again, not having to persuade people to attend, not having to deal with, that some of the BS that goes on when you're trying to work in some programs, because people are wanting to go to Girl Guides and Scouts instead of come swimming, and none of that happened. I've been very lucky with the groups I've coached, and then the Beacon Centre started, and I spoke to the guy who was heading up England Talent then, a guy called Nick Selwood. And we looked at a couple, and I applied for Manchester and got that. Manchester was a car crash when I got there. The absolute car crash.
What year was that, Mark?
Straight after Beijing.
Right, okay.
Straight after Beijing. And it was 120 odd grand overspend every year. It was losing a fortune for the local authority. There were 22 people in the water in 54 hours of pool space.
Right.
It was two people had got national times. One girl called Katie Cooper was a decent swimmer, and somebody that you'll know, Lauren Quigley, had one national time as well. Yeah. So the great benefit of that was it was a blank sheet, and the guys at Manchester basically said, do what you want, how you want, in the time frame you want. Just try and lose as less money. Get rid of complaints. It was full of written complaints. It was really political. Everybody was arguing, and get some Mancunians on some, in some competitive swimming. So it was pretty easy remit. And I went through quite a reflective point then, because if you can imagine walking into a program after getting up at 3:30 a.m. to go to Deventio and coaching, and then working all day and getting home at 9 o'clock at night and doing that 5 or 6 days a week for 5 years. I'd got 22 kids and one of them I was teaching tumble turns to first session. It was like, geez, what am I doing here? This is patterns. And the attendance was pretty much around about 50% from everybody. So it was really back to basics. So I had a lot of time on my hands, and I spent a bit of time with Michael Scott at the time, and Chris Martin. If you remember, Chris Martin used to head up the development program.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time with Chris at that point, and we talked about what was needed. And one of the things that Chris made me realize is that what I'd done at C Squad Maltby, at Trident, and at Deventio wasn't an accident. It was actually, I'd built the culture before I'd even thought about the coaching program.
Right.
So that's what we went to work doing in Manchester, and we built a culture. And we did that through stealth. You know, we basically gave people more attention if they put more in. And we didn't say it, we didn't publicize it. It was literally, the more you attended, the more attention you got. And we started to create that give to get culture. And that went quite well. In 2011, we'd got, I think it was 5 people on European junior team and 5 people on World Junior team. I was head coach at World Junior team. We got 7 medals there, and we got 7 medals at the European Juniors. Lauren Quigley broke European record. It was just a really good summer. And then we had a girl called Emma Saunders that went to Common Games and won a couple of relay medals that you'll know well, Amy.
Yeah. Freestyle.
Yeah. And so that sort of cultural shift worked really well. And obviously, Lloydie made it to London on that relay with you.
Yeah.
And again, it was all down to culture, in my opinion. And there was no groundbreaking physiology. There were no groundbreaking sets and training sessions. It wasn't any particular physiological model. You wouldn't label it as a Albright model or a Trafine model, or it was basically people being the best versions of themselves on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, it really was culture first. But it took me a couple of steps to realise that my strength was creating cultures, if you like.
Very nice.
Yeah, I mean that's fantastic, and it sounds like it sounds quite similar to what our former coach Ian Armiger says as well. Like, he really worked on creating a culture within Loughborough University programme over the years as well. But I mean, you've had athletes, like you've kind of mentioned there, from age group level through to senior level. I mean, you said that you started thinking about looking at other people's philosophies and potentially even building your own from a really young age when you were still swimming. What would you say your philosophies are now, with everything that you've learned, taking swimmers from age group into senior?
I think they're very different. So it's a case of, excuse me, it's very much making sure that at an age group level you're building a base and you're building an engine. And this is not rocket science. It's known to coaches throughout the land. There are the outliers there that don't do that, and the people that haven't had that background. But I think, pre-pubescent and during pubescence, there's got to be some volume in there. And volume doesn't necessarily mean meters. It can be time at task. It can be time at athletic activity as well. So I've had athletes that look like they've not had a huge amount of swimming background. One girl that came to me that was a pretty decent 150 swimmer. Rebecca Guy, I don't know if you remember her. Yeah. So she swam for Britain once, and I think she retired too early because she wasn't anywhere near the finished article, but she had other things to do in her life, and that's great. But Rebecca came to us on like 6 sessions a week for term time only from a school life. But what she had is a really good coach in Bristol, a guy called Jez, who used to work a technique and keep her at A1, not let her sit at threshold all day. and just to keep up with everybody else. So she'd get those building blocks in place. But what she was doing is she was cycling everywhere. She was playing sport at school. So she might have only looked like she was doing 6 hours a week, but there were probably 30 hours a week of athletic activity going on in that week. And she's a good example, and she doesn't mind me quoting her with that, but there are lots and lots of others that I've come across that we've taken to national final, national medal level, that look like they've not got a huge background, but actually they're just doing a hell of a lot of sport, and they are athletic, they're skillful, they have skill acquisition. You know, we've come across these guys that just seem to be able to do a long jump, and they've never trained for it before, but all of a sudden they're winning school long jump champs and representing their local town, and then they're winning the cross country, and then they're suddenly on the cricket team in summer and football in winter, and it's not an accident. These kids are intuitively inquisitive about their athleticism. So as an age group, the philosophy really is getting busy. If I was coaching an age group squad now, a 14 and under squad, and somebody came to me and had half a dozen different activities throughout a fortnight period, if you like, and I try not to just plan in a 7-day period. If they were doing half a dozen different activities and it meant that they could only do maybe 5 out of 7 sessions, I would keep them in. I may not have done in 2000 and 2003 when I'd not had that chance to reflect and see the journey of people doing that. I'd have probably pushed them to get in the water. But I now realise at that point, especially pre-pubescence, lots of different activities, pretty much. It's not as good as swimming, but it's not far off. But they still need to do a decent chunk of swimming. They need to be doing 60 minutes minimum at A1 with the right technique. If you're trying to correct a hand position, a head position, the hip tilt, whatever it may be, then there's just got to be time and task with that. So I don't want people to misunderstand that means that they don't need to go swimming as much. They do, and it needs to be done purposefully. 10,000 hours is not just done aimlessly. It has to be done with real focus and intent. And then I don't ignore anaerobic loading with young kids, because kids want to race, but I try and keep the racing short. And then we start to increase that anaerobic loading as it looks like, they've had the growth spurt, they're starting to fill out, but then seniors, it's very, very different, and it's very individualized. My group's got around about 12 in at the moment, goes up to 16. We normally 4 lanes, whether that's 4 lanes long course or 4 lanes short course, and there can be 3 or 4 sessions running. Similar warm-up, similar swim down, similar drill sets and stuff, skill stuff, coming together, having a laugh together. But when it comes to main sets, there are a multitude of ways of doing 30-50s. You can do 30-50s going the first 25 at max and cruising back. You can do 30-50s best average. Somebody like Chloe Golding that's going 2.9, 200 backstroke at the moment, she would probably kick the pants off most males. They're 200, 400 base. She's hard as nails, resilient, robust, recovers quick. So you turn the volume up, if you like, on somebody that's as good as that. But then you've got somebody like Sam Horrocks, who's in the group, who takes a little bit longer to recover, but he's certainly not lacking in intensity. The lad's got 5,200 fly, and he's got a 157 to his name, and he's not any easier. It's just slightly different. It's understanding what those individual athletes need, especially as they grow and change. So I've coached Sam since he was 13, and he's gone from 10-400s at 13, 14 years old. If I give him 10-400s now, it's probably with loads of rest, keep your heart rate 120, stick some fins on for opposite ones, try and reduce your stroke count on even ones. It's a lot easier. Whereas 10-400s would have been 5 minutes, go, make the turnaround, lad.
How old is Sam now, Rosie?
Sam would be 25, 26.
Yeah, just see the difference there.
Yeah. But part and parcel of that philosophy of coaching seniors is encouraging them to be the best coach of themselves. My job is not to coach them. My job is to lead them to coach themselves. When you get past university age, in my opinion, and you're still swimming, then there needs to be a serious amount of input from that person, because they will know their body more than anybody else. You know, they don't need chasing to go to bed early and turn the phone off before they go to bed and eat properly. And they're doing it because they want to.
Yeah.
So they need to have input into what's going on. And that doesn't mean that they get to decide all the time, because especially at this moment in time, when we are really lucky to have got access to a multitude of training programs.
Right. Yeah.
And everybody thinks that going, you know, suddenly there's a cult goes on for 6 to 12 months of everybody needs to go 30-25s and do ultra short race pace training, and maybe that might work for the odd person, but there's still nobody ever won a major games off that type of program.
Yeah. Really interesting.
So yeah, but if somebody wants to try that, it's discussing it and why. Where do you think that fits in with you? Where's the evidence? Let's test that, which we bring the support staff in. Let's test your physiology to make sure that can work.
I mean, that was one of the things that we were going to kind of say to you, like, does that amount of input the swimmer has into their own training program change as they get older? Which obviously you've kind of said, yes, it does there. And you've spoken a bit about like the physiology of how things change from age group to senior. How about the change in kind of the mentality that you need to kind of be aware of around training with age group and training with senior squads, and that coach-athlete relationship? How does that change?
It's a very adult environment on the pool side at Manchester with my squad. There's a lot of adult banter, for want of a better phrase, but none of it is disingenuous, and none of it could be misinterpreted like that. We pretty much toe the line with that. The environment is very much, the athletes are free to question.
Right. Yeah.
Done appropriately, and part and parcel of being the best version of yourself as an athlete is learning to question appropriately. Because if you're going to be good, you've got to work with more than one coach. Because the likelihood is your coach is not going to be the one that takes you to the call room at the Olympic Games. It's going to be somebody else. You are very lucky if your coach goes to the Olympic Games and gets a deck pass. They are so rare. You're going to have to work with physios, soft tissue, doctors, sports science biomech, S&C. Then you're going to have to start working with strategic leads, because people that are working in strategic positions in governing bodies are going to want to have input to what you're doing and decide. We did an exercise a few weeks ago where we got Chloe Golding to list all the people that have influence in her decision making. 14 people.
Right.
Wow. It's a team effort, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the athlete needs to, part of our job as coaches is the athlete now needs to know how to question to get the answers that they need. And they, just like learning a swimming skill, just like learning a musical skill, if you're a musician, you're gonna make mistakes. And the track for us as a team of staff is to ensure that those athletes are free to make those mistakes and learn from them. Just like you're free from being vilified if you try a different way of pacing a race and it goes pear-shaped. That is the same deal. So we have a lad called Jamie Ingram that's going 54, 100 fly. He looks like Ivan Drago. He's an absolute giant. And he's only just starting to get strong, and he's coming up to 21. And his questioning in the last 3 years that he's worked with me has changed massively. And it is absolutely brilliant now. It's probing, it's detailed, it has a real sense for checking his understanding of what anybody's saying. So it's a case of making sure that those athletes can develop that skill as well. Because if you're going to be a senior, you've been on teams. Was it Cyprus we went to in the run into London, and there was more staff than there were swimmers.
Could be right, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and all of those staff are delivering something that you as an athlete can get something from. But you only have one shot at your career as an athlete, so you have to make sure that you own it, really. And I see that as my job with a senior, developing somebody. We have a couple of youngsters, 17, 18-year-olds on our group, and I'm a bit more dictatorial with them, but we're starting to tease the questioning out of them and asking them to make decisions. And as long as it doesn't have a real detrimental effect, we let them do what we believe is going to fail, but then we put in place a reflective process. As you can imagine, you two know me well, it's very informal, the reflective practice, because that's my coaching style. There's no sit down with a PowerPoint and a whiteboard. It's right, how did that feel? What do you think you need to do next time, and how and why? That's the big thing. Why?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, more facilitated really than giving the answers at all. And like you say, learning is what needs to take place for any athlete to grow and get better. But in order to learn, you need to make some mistakes now and again. And the only way you're going to make mistakes is by going outside of your comfort zone, isn't it? And I think more often than not, I think people feel it's working, we'll just stick doing this. But really, potential could be that bit more by just pushing outside of that comfort zone. But you're never going to know unless you do that. So yeah, I think it's all too easy to fall into that trap of not wanting to make mistakes as an athlete, because your career does have a shelf life as an athlete. You can't go on forever. But it's an important part of the process to make those mistakes, for sure.
Yeah, I think
it is, and I think there's got to be a case where you also give freedom for the athlete to say, actually, I'm under pressure. I want you to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Some people want that, and that is also just as fine. And we've gone down a great route educationally with the governing bodies in UK sport of recent years, where it's been all about empowerment, and there's lots of stuff that I genuinely believe in. But sometimes some personalities want to be told, and they should not be made to feel like they are a lesser developed product just because they want to be told. Every individual needs to feel comfortable with the relationship they build with their coach and their support staff.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, really, really interesting what you're talking about there, Mark. I think, I think for that, some people, like, if you got to question everything, it might create a little bit of doubt. So that those people just want to be dictated to, and just get the confidence from yourself and from your staff to say, this is exactly what we think is going to work for you. And they'll just say, great, just go do it. Other people need to know the hows and the whys. But I don't think that maybe I'm wrong on this, maybe correct me, but maybe many programs, many coaches would encourage that so much. Most of them still seem to, I think, because swimming in general is a little bit of an age group sport. And then when you get to seniors, they're still dictated to in that same way almost. So here's your session, here's your work, go and do it. You're not really asked to question that program. That's seen as maybe respectful. I've never really seen that encouraged as much as what you're saying that you guys push.
It's interesting that, Joe, because I think maybe that could be a perception of, because there is that much age and youth swimming. Some of the old guard coaches were very that I've learned from Dave Heathcock, Dave Haller, very good at empowering their athletes and ensuring that they have those decisions, they had control of those decisions. But like you say, the other thing as well, Joe, is I am convinced that as a coach, you need to coach to your own beliefs and personality. Yeah. And if you believe as a coach that actually we're going to do regimented behavior, then actually that's right for you to deliver. Because if you do something that you don't believe in, you're going to do a pants job. And I liken this as regards to, if we all did the empowerment model, then what would happen if every person coming out of school, college, university did that? There'd be nobody in the police, There'd be nobody in the Army, Navy, RAF. There'd be nobody that's nurses. There'd be nobody that'd be paramedics.
Yeah.
Because those vocations tie into people that want to be in a hierarchical order. They want structure. They want direction. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's part and parcel of the beauty of the human species, that there is so much diversity, and the fact that no one size cap fits everybody.
Yeah. Is that not very, very tricky as you as a coach, having all this variety of, you know, different personality types and stuff, and your coaching staff? That must be quite hard to fix. It's interesting you mentioned Dave Haller as well, because I remember being Dave was one of my coaches in a training camp once, and he said to me, $7,000, make it up yourself. And I just had no idea what to do. After a warm-up, I was like, what next? But yeah, so it's quite tricky to...
That sounds like Dave.
Yeah, he just make it up himself. He read his paper. But like you say, he empowered his athletes. Dave Davis, when he swam with him, knew exactly what he was going to get on with on that sort of session, whereas I was completely lost because I never had sessions thrown at me like that before. So I was lost there. So how do you cope with that as a staff? Like, what does it take to be a good coach to manage all these players?
Stops me getting bored.
Yeah,
I like working with different people. You know, if I'm honest, I'm a bit of a social animal when it comes to work. I like the interaction. So the fact that everybody's different floats my boat. We've even got a girl from Romania that it finds it really challenging that she can make decisions, because she's come from a really former communist hardline $100,000 a week program as an age grouper, coming into us, you know, and she's, but part of empowering her has been great fun. You know, it is difficult, but nobody enters elite sport to take the easy option, do they?
No, absolutely.
You know? And it's difficult in a good way, really. You get into be part of the journey of people being the best versions of themselves.
Yeah, it makes the career really appealing. I think that aspect of it in particular, just to be on that journey with people and be an influence on that journey as well as a coach, like really a huge influence as a coach, because you have to actually then manage the staff around them probably more than they do to an extent. You know, you're in charge of who has that job, maybe for sports science or for physio or for whatever it is that suits your athletes, and you kind of get to make those decisions and have that influence. So yeah, really, really attractive.
Yeah, the difficulty is, Amy, is not the athlete, it's normally the support staff. And my pal Luke, who I work hand in hand with, will probably listen to this and think, oh, they don't think I'm difficult, but that's not what I mean. It's actually sometimes as head coach, you just go, do you know what? No, we're doing that with the staff. You know, and it doesn't happen very often, but it's like, sometimes it's like, no, we're not doing that. We're prioritizing this. And that's what we're going to do. And especially as a very robust Yorkshireman that gets to the point quickly, that can sometimes come across quite, what's the phrase? I don't mean aggressive. I mean, you know, intimidating at times. I've been called intimidating by staff. I've got a really good physio that's a northern girl, and she tells me how it is, and she says you were a bit intimidating in that meeting, and you know, so again, the gift of feedback. So it's encouraging the staff as well to be able to question you. Yeah. But sometimes as a head coach, you just have to make that call.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've kind of probably covered a few of these bits anyway now, but I mean, what do you think, I don't know, maybe in 3 or 4 different words, what makes a good coach?
There has to be a passion.
Passion, yeah.
You know, you're not going to get up at, I mean, club coaches are getting up at 3:30, 4 o'clock. You know, you're not going to get up at that time for 30, 40 years unless you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
It's not the best paid job in the world for the number of hours. I mean, if you were a very good, skilled, I don't know, but car bodywork person, painter, if you were a great joiner or plumber, electrician doing this many hours, you'd earn twice as much, but you certainly won't have as much fun.
Yeah.
And so there's got to be that passion there. I think you've got to be inquisitive. One of the things that frustrates me at times about governing bodies is they look at it and go, well, that person's had that education a few years ago, that's it. No. It doesn't work like that. It's this, the very nature of people having a long-term career in coaching is they're inquisitive, because every athlete's a slightly different journey.
Yeah.
So that passionate, inquisitive, and I think if I were to pick three, it used to be driven, and that's different to passion, right? But I also think now I would change that. Now I'm a little bit older. I'm in my late 40s. It's more about balance.
Okay.
So having that balance in your life to be able to then still have the energy. You two have been through the circuit as swimmers. You know, you'll go through the major meet, and then there's that dip, and you end up run down with colds when you've come off when you go have your break, and you struggle to recover, and then it's time to get back in, and you feel like you could have just done with another week. And now imagine that in your 40s, 50s, and some people in the 60s. And I used to look at people that were older than me. I remember Terry Dennison taking a really big chunk of time off at some point. I thought, flipping heck, why would you do that? I now understand why.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, coaching can burn you out. So you need to make sure that there's some balance. And one of the great things I learned is to turn my phone off. UK Sport taught me that as we ran into London. You know, get it on flight mode, get it out of the way, do some other stuff. So yeah, passion, inquisitive, but have some balance.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Very smart, mate. Yeah, good answers to that. Yeah, I understand what you're saying there, I think, on all of them. That balance, really important. And going back to what you said before with like teaching your athletes to question, I feel like you're teaching them skills for sport, it's stuff that they're going to transfer into like later in life when they need to go into a working environment, whatever that ends up being. In all aspects, I feel like they're very important skills. And as you say, burnout for coaches has got to be, you know, just as thought about as burnout for athletes. We all hear about that, but you don't think about it with coaches. And you mentioned going to London and stuff, and because you must, as a coach, sort of almost live and die with your swimmers' performances. Like going to a meet, yeah, obviously you've got 14, 20 guys in a squad. One's going to have a great swim, one's going to have a bad swim, and your emotions are up and
Roller coaster, we call it, Joe.
exactly
Roller coaster, you're up and down and up and down.
So you live and die with them. But like you said, you've put guys on teams at all levels, including Olympic Games, and you mentioned Paralympic Games as well. Sorry, yeah. And then, like you mentioned, poolside passes. They're very, very hard to get at like Olympic Games. If I'm right, I'm remembering this right, you didn't get a poolside pass for London 2012. But I'm pretty sure I saw you walking around poolside at one point, Rosie.
I mean, Joe. Don't know what you mean.
Gift of the gab, mate. I've always been impressed.
Ever the blagger. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been to a number of major meets. I even went to World Student Games last summer to watch Golding race and sat in the stands. And there's a different dynamic, and you can get a lot out of that as a coach, because you know, you can watch the prep, you can see the prep area, you can see what they're doing at a distance without interacting, and you can then look at, well, what's worked, what hasn't, where is the independence and where isn't it?
Yeah.
And when you know an athlete inside out, you can see what's happening to the body language, facial expressions, what's happening to the posture, how quick is their stride compared to usual, are they stressed, are they not stressed? You can see these things. And it was interesting watching that 4x100 relay that you were in, Amy, in London, sat in the stands, because you could see the change in people's gait as they walked to usual. And I'd watched all of you four deliver good performance, because obviously I had two girls that were trying to make that team, so I knew all about everybody else that was with the 100 free female, you know. So You looked at when the pressure points was. So being in the stands isn't necessarily a negative.
No.
And I had a great week
Mm.
that week. It was a fantastic opportunity to do that, and relatively stress free in a way, because you could actually sit and learn. If I remember, I wrote a report on the body language of staff after as part of that.
Wow.
And it was fascinating watching that, and I learned a lot watching people like Dennis and Michael, and Ben and Ian were mates of mine. So it's watching the changes in them. But then the deck is a different environment, and you sort of putting your game face on as a coach, because you've got to be on a constant. You cannot be emotive, high or low, and it does not matter whether your home athlete bombs or wins. For everybody else you're looking after and everybody else that you're coming into contact with, you have to be on a level. It's absolutely crucial. There's little tricks. We take yourself away and look in a mirror and check your facial expression. Little tricks like that as a coach you need to do, and it's having a constant stance on pull side. Stand the same way. Put your feet in the same position. Little things like that, because you guys as athletes feed off that. If we're negative, it infects the swimmers. If we're over hyper, that's not usual. They're like, "What's going on with you? What's going on around here?" And it does happen. I had a very interesting experience in Rio at the Paralympics. I had a deck pass for paras in 2012, and I had somebody in 2008. I didn't go at all. A deck pass in 2012 and a deck pass in 2016. Incredibly structured team under Chris Ferber at paras, but very relaxed. But everybody knew their role really, really well. But the strange thing was, in Manchester, in the club, I'd coached for 4 years a lad who was Brazilian. And I'm in Rio, coaching at the Paralympic Games, and this guy cleaned up. 5 medals.
Wow.
He had an absolute blinder. The guy's, he's a para and he's going 5100 free. He's a proper athlete.
Yeah.
And we knew it was coming. He went back a little bit earlier to Brazil, and I was coaching via FaceTime. And his coach there was basically sticking an iPad on deck, and I was watching stuff and giving feedback, writing sessions, and sending them over to Brazil because they insisted that they've got to be there in the running.
Right.
But this guy cleaned up, and I had to look. Oh, yes. Constant. Inside, I'm like, oh, yeah. So I had a British girl that were winning multiple medals from Manchester. I had, a Brazilian swimmer that were winning multiple medals. So we had a great week there. And I also had somebody that I've known for donkey's years, Sasha, suddenly turn around in his late 30s and break a world record and win. And he's a mate of mine, So, but again, it's that constant. You've got to do that. You've got to have that game face.
It's familiarity.
Otherwise, you just infect.
Yeah, it's familiarity for the athletes as well. I know personally, I used to get very nervous. So if something was like, say at Olympics in 2012, my coach was Ian, like if he would have been totally different and I'd say not as crazy as normal, because he is always jumping around and energetic and everything. If it wasn't like that, that would have felt really odd and quite unsettling and probably made me more nervous. So it's crazy how much of an impact just coaches' body language can have on the performance of a swimmer or an athlete.
And a lot of swimmers and their parents don't understand the emotional fatigue that comes from a coach delivering that. Absolutely not. And for club coaches that are working really hard to win regional medals and get kids to nationals, to spend from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. 2 days in a row on deck at Ponce Forge, Manchester, wherever, getting those kids through what is really important to those kids and those parents and that coach.
Yeah.
They don't understand why on Monday night that coach is knackered. and there's no two ways about it. It's physiologically and emotionally draining. And again, we go back to the balance point. He's having that understanding, and it's a lot easier educating seniors to say, actually, I need a break. I need a couple of days off, guys. I'm going to turn my phone off. Other than WhatsApp, if you need me, you really need to get hold of me. WhatsApp me, and if it can wait, just give us 48 hours off. And seniors understand that if you explain it to them. It's hard when you're 15 and suddenly you've had a sleep and a burger and suddenly you're recovered. Everything's great. So Bill Sweetenham taught us all to be tough, whether we were in the water or on poolside.
Right.
But I think we need to be smart and tough as well.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Is that something you just learned yourself, Rosie, about like the body language and everything you were talking about there, or is that something you've taken from other coaches, or did it come from being a bit of a fly on the wall, like in the stands at certain meets, or was it a combination of all?
It's the inquisitive bit, I suppose, Joe. It's something that always interested me. Were interested by swimmers' reactions when I first started coaching. I had a young lad that dropped a huge amount on 100 back at Yorkshire's when I were coaching at Maltby C Squad. And I remember sitting down with him on poolside at Maltby Pool saying, right, great job, but now we need to do this. You are 3 seconds away from what won last year's Nationals. Right. This is what I think we need to do. And he broke down in tears. And he's saying, no, it's ever good enough. And I'm like, I've got this wrong.
Yeah.
This conversation could have gone better.
Yeah.
So it's understanding. It was that understanding, because coaching is not about how you deliver 10-400s. It's how you work with the athlete and understand them. That's coaching. Writing a set is training.
Yeah.
We can all write a set because there is no right and wrong physiological model, because 10 Olympic finalists will have 10 different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
So I've always been inquisitive about stuff like that. And then I was lucky enough, Michael Scott put me on something called an elite coach program in fact, it was just as I started at Manchester. And that was a UK sport education program, a little bit weird, but in a great way, very interactive, very talking things through, my sort of way of learning. And you could request more information you could request to go down different channels if you like. And that was one of the things they pushed me down. And I spent time with cycling, rowing, athletics. I did a little bit of watching some stuff at Man City as they were developing. And so it's not just looking at swimming coaches, it's looking at other coaches, I suppose. Although Sweetenham sent me all over the world watching coaches, and I didn't understand at the time that he'd watch me coach at Deventio and then think, he's doing that but not well enough. I know this coach in California or on the coast does it really well. I'll send him to see them for a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
right.
Smart.
And then write a report on what you'd seen. So he were a very smart cookie.
Yeah.
Very smart cookie, because he'd do that. He'd watch his charges, see where they were weak, then point them in the right direction to learn that.
I mean, you were saying that in 2012 you weren't on deck, you were in the stands watching your swimmers, and it was a great experience, even though kind of you weren't right in it with them at the time. And you were looking at all the body language. Did you go and see any other sports whilst in competition and look at any comparisons between other sports and swimming then? Did you see any differences?
Didn't get any tickets.
Oh.
But I did blag in Super Saturday.
Sounds right, yeah.
Because as we came out of the pool, you could go around the back of the athletics track. And do you remember where we went in and out for the opening closing ceremonies, that great big tunnel?
Yeah.
That walkway that went onto track. I blagged in through there and I watched Super Saturday. And if I'm really honest, I was just entertained. I didn't really watch the coaches there. I didn't spend much time watching other coaches other than ours and swimming coaches when we were during sessions.
Okay.
The interesting stuff was the French team while their guys and girls were racing, because they were very animated.
Right.
And they looked nonchalant most of the time, but then were animated when they were racing. But then, as I've looked at that subsequently, they're like that all the time. So it was the norm.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay. Oh, fair enough.
We may have seen a couple of extra sports when we were down there as well. It's get a smile and just look confident and get through. So, mate, what have like you said, alluding to everything you said there, you said you're very social. That's what you like about the job. You could go and do other things and make more money into the social aspect as much as anything else. All this stuff you put in place, we're not doing any of that right now. So, how have you been for yourself keeping your morale up? How have you been keeping the Sunners' morale up? And what have you asked the guys to do physically during this time? And what's going to happen once you get back into the pool, whenever that may be?
We put in place quite quickly an alternative plan. We decided that it was pretty obvious it was going to be around about 3 months when you looked at what was going on elsewhere in the world. So the support staff and myself sat down, we talked about it before we talked to the swimmers about it, but the alternative plan was, right, okay, where's the weakest area of your race? So, and we're going to do something on land that addresses that with no consequence to what's going on in the water for a few weeks. So instead of just going, let's stay fit, let's get strong, it was like, what specifically can we do? Okay. So if your front end's weak but your back end's great, we were like, if you do a lot of power stuff and a lot of speed stuff, you're not able then to keep up your super strength, if you like, your back end, during training in a normal cycle, because you're screwed from doing all that work. You've got the DOMs, you've got soreness, you can only channel it so far. The back end's going to drop anyway because we're not in water. Yeah. So don't worry about that. So we put in place our S&C coach, Lewis Fox, has done a phenomenal amount of work in detail with the athletes on turning their weakness into super strengths. Okay. We don't know how much those athletes are going to respond because we can't test effectively. Yeah. But we've been working in 3-week cycles of land and basically trying to step up. And they're doing a lot of sessions of land. They're doing a similar amount to swimming, but in small pockets. So that's been put in place. We're doing a lot of social activities. We have a Sunday fun day, so it's daft things like how many t-shirts can you get on in a minute, and we post it. And we bake together. We do quizzes. A lot of stuff that other people are doing. My kids have been baking with my athletes, so our kitchen were a carnage. And lots of stuff like that. Even playing psych together. You know, the game on your phone, where have a look for it. It's basically everybody joins in and you have to finish a sentence about people. Just stuff like that. So, but we've had quite high engagement. 1 or 2 in the last few weeks have gone back to work because a lot of mine work because they're not funded. Because funded places aren't what they used to be. There aren't as many. And we had a couple that still were doing uni work remotely, so they were busy. So we've tried to keep a routine and a balance as much as possible. We're not interested in body composition at the minute because what's the point? So yeah, we've put all that in place. Most of my group now are at least having 1 open water swim a week since that opened in early June. Chloe Golding's been swimming at Loughborough with the centre and gone down there. She comes back to Manchester on Monday. The Para-National Centre's back in the water at our place next week. We're going to be a couple of weeks or so after that. And she's getting in a lane alongside them. So we don't believe that we've lost anything. We actually think that it's a chance to gain something. And we've even had a couple of girls that have said, I want to improve my mental resilience for race day. That's been their weakness. So in the middle of squad meetings, we've put them on the squad to present something. Right. or you know, we've had a lot of athletes leading land training amongst the other squads through the club. Right. Because most of the coaches are on furlough. I'm employed by the city, so I'm not furloughed, but the club employs a lot of staff, and they've been furloughed. So a lot of planning went in place early, and then we're tweaking it in the background, but the athletes are delivering that. So Chloe, for example, delivers a core stability session to a couple of squads a week. We've got a girl called Jess Calderbank that's a really twitchy sprinter that is an S&C graduate that's proper into the S&C. She's and very, very academic. She delivers to another squad as well. So there's a lot of that going on. We worked out, we did a percentage. I'm saying I didn't do the percentage because I'm not analytical. I can't look at a spreadsheet all day. It wears me out. But we as a team have looked at it, and we reckon we're over 90% engagement. Brilliant. So that's really good. I know some programs are having problems, and we're going to, as a sport, we're going to need to think about this, because we've alluded to that there could be some drop off from people. And I think that, in my opinion, the danger's not going to be the first week back in the water, whether people come back, because I think people will be desperate to see people that they like, that they want to spend time with, and they want to get a little bit of the normal life back. I think the danger's going to come 5, 6, 7 weeks in, because they're going to be fatigued. School for those kids, uni for others, is going to be back on track. There's going to be a lot of residual fatigue. Coaches, club committees, and parents, as well as swimmers, need to be mindful of this. I know we've talked before about, some squads are still having their summer break. James Gibson's group's still having that summer break. We're planning in August bank holiday weekend, a very long weekend off, and a true weekend off. Go and eat and drink what you like, stay up as late as you like, do what you want. If we can do that with social distancing. But go and enjoy yourselves. And we're going to plan in regular breaks, because there's not going to be any meets that matter for some time. So, and I think it's making sure that there's bite-sized goals. And the other bit that coaches and parents need to be mindful of is some of these adolescents and kids are going to be fed up 6 weeks in, 8 weeks in, 9 weeks in. It's okay to give them another couple of days off. If we're truly in this to develop people to be the best versions of themselves, so that then they drive becoming the best athlete they can be, every now and again, you're going to need to be flexible. And if that athlete needs it, because people are not getting a break now, people should not misunderstand what's going on now as a break. It's a break from training, but it's not a physical and psychological break. People are not free to do what they want. They're not going on holiday and soaking the sun up and eating too much junk food. It is not happening. People are eating maybe too much if they are doing, because they're fed up. And using it as a comfort. So they're still going to need, I really like what Gibbo's done there with he's still put that break in August for his athletes, because they're still going to need that psychological and physiological reset to go for the next season. So especially the level of his athletes doing ISL and stuff. So I think for us, we did plan for getting in on the 6th of July. It's not quite worked out that way with political decisions. And we're still working to that plan, but it's still a staged return. We've had a lot of stuff that's gone on, and we're trying to communicate heavily. My phone's normally got about 1,000 unread WhatsApps from the groups that's in there. There's one other group's got 600 WhatsApps in it, and I haven't read, because they're all sending clips into each other about doing different exercises and different activities. So there is a lot of engagement, and I know a lot of coaches are doing a good job with that. You talk to, there's a coaches collective that's getting together a couple of times a week and doing presentations to each other, and people are doing a lot of good work. The danger's going to be, in my opinion, if we got on, let's say we get in the 1st of August, is going to be mid-September and October, especially with January.
So how do you maintain that engagement? Is it those small goals, like you've said? Is that the way to do it, as well as, if they need a break, given those extra long weekends? Like what is the main thing that you're going to have to put across to your coaching staff to keep them in the water? What would you recommend to other coaches?
I would relate it to, you've got to relate the goals to what they see in their race. So, Joe, what is the weakness? Right, let's put this in place. Then let's evaluate it every 3 weeks. Make sure it's working, the LAMP program, and I think that's why engagement's been high for us. And we have been lucky with Lewis, because he's employed by the university. MMU, so he's not being furloughed because he's still doing full delivery.
Great.
And I think that it's making sure that it relates. It's no good just going, right, we're going to bench press more.
Yeah.
So what how's that going to give me a medal? You know, it's we're going to bench press more because that's going to lead us to this, and that's going to give us that. And when we get in water, we've got this and that, so we can then use it. So it's ensuring that the athlete, again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, is fully in the process of deciding what their goals are and then putting the plan in place for that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've got a great plan and you're really aware of how this is going to affect the yeah, definitely. And I mean, you're really aware of how it's going to affect the athletes, not just physiologically but psychologically as well, and how building into that is a really important process in this uncertain time that we're in. And it sounds to me like you said you've got 95% engagement or something. That's huge. And so you've got this brilliant team atmosphere that's going on, and it's just a collaboration of people and all their different skills. You've got swimmers actually taking sessions, which is pushing them out of their comfort zone, maybe in a different way, giving them a different challenge, keeping them engaged, and it's all bringing everyone together as part of a big team. So I feel like you're in a great place as a squad right now.
I hope so.
Stance for definite, and we wish you all the best. And I want to say thank you for talking to us today, Mark. It's been really interesting, and we've learned a lot.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks a lot. Good to see you both again.
You too, Rosie. Take care of yourself. Thanks, mate.
We'll catch up soon. Take care.
Yeah, cheers, mate.
Bye.
All the best. Cheers.
Huge thank you to Mark for chatting with us today. We've really enjoyed it, and thank you to you guys for listening. We hope you've enjoyed it too. Make sure that you subscribe on YouTube or Spotify or all the other usual platforms, and take a look at the other chats that we've had.